Hello and welcome to this episode of the Dissection. I'm Dr. Chim and today we will be taking a look into the portal. So we'll be discussing the Jays' ventures in the portal. We'll be talking about guys that we have targeted, both publicly and otherwise. We'll take a look at our kind of roster situation and see if there's anything to discuss there. Kind of keeping this sort of vague and open. This is just something I wanted to throw together. If you have interest in listening about this kind of stuff, if you want to be up to date on our portal movements, that's kind of what this is for. I'm not going to pretend to be it's too much of an insider. I got a few people who tell me a few things. I got a few connections to the program, but besides that, this is mostly just going to be a roundup of the sources, of aggregating some sources, of talking about all things portal. And I'll probably try and get one of these out every couple of weeks and just keep everyone up to date on new developments in the Creighton portal world. So I don't know, I'm keeping an eye on something like 40, 45 players. We'll talk about, a dozen of them today. We'll go through some of our more serious targets, and I'll get this out of the way too. Just take this for what it's worth. I try to do some analysis on these players. The people wonder, like, oh, you never played college basketball, you never coached college basketball. Like, yeah, like neither did a lot of the people who are around this game. I like to think I know ball. You can judge for yourself. I really don't care. Take the analysis with a grain of salt, but I like to think I do my research. I've watched film on most of these guys who we haven't seen, who aren't obvious. So we'll get right into it. We are on the back of Fred King announcing his trip to the portal. This was certainly not unexpected. It leaves us between. I say his wasn't unexpected. Doetzler's surprised me a little bit more, but I think we're pretty high on Ty Davis as a backup point guard option next year. Other than that, Brock Weiss entering the portal was a little surprising in the sense that you don't see a guy come to a place redshirt for a year, and I shouldn't say you don't see that anymore, because I think that happens a lot the last two seasons. That's how we ended up with Isaac Trout. But we currently sit with 3 open scholarship spots, and that's assuming no one else leaves, which I don't believe will be the case. At the very least, I think we're looking. So I've been pretty clear all along that I think both Trey and Kalk are gone. I've thought that since the beginning of the season, and I haven't heard anything convincing to change my mind. If I had to put a percentage on it, I'd just be guessing. But the last bit of reliable information I got says that they're both leaving. So that's what I'm going with until I hear otherwise. So in that sense, we have 5 open roster spots to fill. I expect 3 of them will at least be higher profile transfers, guys we expect to play minutes this season, and then there might be 2 smaller adds, like, hey, maybe this guy breaks out next year, something like that. The point guard spot, Ashworth and Davis, looks to be our group right now. I expect we'll go with a little bit of a 3-guard rotation between the 1 and the 2 of guys who can handle the ball. So Ashworth and maybe 2 other kind of combo guards will rotate between those 2 spots because they can all kind of play point guard, shooting guard, both positions. As far as the other spots, it will really depend on what we add. I don't know if McAndrew will be ready to start next year, if Miller or Green will get the nod at the 4, if Miller might get moved to the 3 and both of them start, depending on what we add. Trout will probably be in the mix for 5 minutes next year. I don't expect him to play at the 4 much, especially with McAndrew coming in. So that'll be interesting to see, because I'm really hoping, and I think it's the case, that Trout's going to stay. I'm interested to see what he gets to do with a full offseason of practicing being a pick-and-pop 5. I think that opens up possibilities in the offense, and I don't think it'll be a thing where... I think Trout could be a starting 5 next year just by necessity, but it won't be a situation where he's playing Kalk minutes, right? He'll play 25, 24 minutes, and the other center would play 15 in that case, right? So I don't think whatever we end up with, if Kalkbrenner leaves, which I expect him to, and I just am not going to pretend otherwise until I hear otherwise. I'm not expecting a bell cow 5. I'm not expecting our centers next year to play 30 or more minutes a game. We'll see. I could be totally wrong. It'll depend on who enters the portal, who we add from the portal. Because right now with the centers I'm looking at, I'm not seeing it out there. So we'll jump right into the players. First one I want to talk about is the only center that I could maybe see filling that role, and that's Amari Williams out of Drexel. So we have him on campus this week for a visit, I believe. He's wrapped up a couple of others. He is a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year from Drexel. He is a very efficient finisher at the rim, something 68%, I think, at the rim. Good defender. His field goal percentage comes down a bit from his rim finishing because he takes some pretty ill-advised shots in the paint that I think we could eliminate pretty easily. He visited St. John's. He visited Indiana. I think he's got a Florida visit scheduled, and now Kentucky too. So I'll be interested to see if we end up going this route. His O rating is not strong. It's one of the weakest in the portal, and that's with a high usage. So again, I think he's the kind of guy, if you eliminate the bad/ill-advised shots from his repertoire, he could be a very efficient player. And to be fair, he only played, I think, 23 minutes at Drexel last year per game. So he wasn't a bell cow 5 on a worse team. So I don't think he would be on our team. But he is ranked, he's number 17 in the portal by On3. He's got 1 year of eligibility left. There's a lot to like here. Good rebounder, good rim protector. I would be happy if we add him. Right now, I think he is our best realistic option at the center position out of the portal. Because guys like Omar, he's going to Indiana. Christ Esendoku, who we were in on, is going to Providence, which is kind of shocking that he committed there so quickly. But hey, good for English, I guess, if he's pulling in guys that easily, because that's a big-time talent. Dante Maddox Jr., so 6'2" combo guard out of Toledo, 1 year of eligibility left. We are in his top 5, I believe, now. It was originally a top 4, and he scheduled a late visit with us to include in his top 5. And this guy is the kind of guy I'm talking about when I say I see a 3-player rotation in our guard spots next year. He can play on-ball, off-ball. He's a good decision maker in terms of he takes most of his shots either at the rim or beyond the arc. He's a bit of a volume shooter, which he wouldn't probably have with us. His turnover numbers are good. He forces turnovers on the defensive end. I see him as a smart ad. I see him as a very smart player. I would be excited to have him on board. 119 O rating, 40% from beyond the arc, average 16 a game with Toledo. So that's a guy I think could bloom in an offense like ours. Not an elite ad in the portal. He's ranked 110 by On3. I think he's better than that, but he's also not like a top 30-40 ad probably. But I'd really like to have him aboard. I think there's a lot there to like. The hometown boy, Frankie Fiddler. So if you aren't familiar with him, I would hope you are by now if you follow Jays basketball, if you live in Omaha. He's 6'7". He's kind of a true wing. He's got one of the highest Torvik ratings in the portal. Just kind of crazy offensive numbers, 20 a game. His usage, his O rating, his true shooting, they're all high. He played well against good teams this year for the first time in his career, which has kind of been the missing piece for him. Shot, 37% from 3, but he can score at all 3 levels. And he has had an interesting recruitment, it sounds like, because for a while, Wisconsin seemed to be his slam dunk destination. And if you asked me to bet, I would still bet on the Badgers, but not as sure as I was a week ago. There's thoughts now that Michigan State is actually in play when they were kind of thought to be the throwaway school in his top 4. Apparently a return to UNO is on the table now, which I'll kind of believe that when I see it, but that was a popular discourse and it reached some pretty high channels. Creighton and Nebraska seem to be 4 and 5 at this point, and I think Creighton's 5th in that pecking order. I think Nebraska's ahead there. So I don't know. I'm really interested to see. His commitment is tomorrow morning, actually. So we're actually under 12 hours from his commitment. And I don't know who he's going to pick. If you ask me, I'd bet Wisconsin, because they've kind of been the clubhouse leader this whole time. I don't know. He had his visit with Michigan State was his most recent visit. So we'll see what happens there. Creighton fans, don't get your hopes up. Nebraska fans, maybe, but probably not. Roddy Gale Jr. So a lot of steam here, a lot of smoke here. We just had him on campus, I think, recently, if not literally this weekend. 6'4". He's kind of a shooting guard is not the right way to put it. He's kind of a slasher. Out of Ohio State. He started almost every game for them this season. He's got 2 years of eligibility left, which is probably the best thing to like about him. He's ranked 43 by On3. His numbers aren't great from an efficiency standpoint. His true shooting is below average. His O rating is below average in terms of guys we're looking at in the portal. Played 31 minutes a game, 14 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. So not a bad stat line, certainly from a Power 6 player at all. The thing that I think concerned me the first time I looked at him, and the thing that I'm kind of softening on now, is he's a 28% three-point shooter. But at the same time, he's an 84% free throw shooter. He's very efficient around the rim. So he finds ways to score that aren't beyond the arc. He is a high-octane athlete for 6'4". He can dunk off lobs. He can dunk in transition. So this would represent to me a significant effort by the coaching staff to balance out our athleticism. We know that, in theory, our point guard spot for the next few years is Ashworth and Ty Davis, and that does not represent a high degree of athleticism as much as they seem to be high on Davis. So this represents a different approach, and I'm very okay with finding balance on the roster. I don't think you have to choose between an athletic guard and one that can shoot a three, but if we have to, it's nice to at least have one of each, right? So he's not a plus defender yet. He's not a plus rebounder, not a plus passer, but you can see improvement in all three. He was a guy who appeared on draft boards a few years ago, and his first 2 years at Ohio State didn't exactly turn out, I think, the way anyone was hoping. So there's a project there, and there's a projectable player. I think our staff can project his shot because of his high free throw percentage. So I completely get that. I completely see that. If we are looking at this year as a let's put out guys who, let's see what happens, I totally understand. I can totally see it. I'll be excited if we do land him. If nothing else, it's poaching a Power 6 starter, right? And that's never going to not be a big deal, even in this day and age where it seems like 2 players off of every starting lineup transfer. You are taking a starter from Ohio State. 10 years ago, that would have been a gigantic deal, right? So it still is a little bit. And I mean, at the end of the day, he scores 14 points a game. You want to have that in your lineup. And he does it in a way that theoretically shouldn't be affected by a poor shooting night. If he's going to shoot 28% from 3, I don't want him taking 102 threes. But, if he's going to get to the line, if he's going to get fouled, I think he shoots something above 60% at the rim. Okay, great. So I'll kind of timestamp this one. So we're like 14 minutes in at this point, and we're going to get to the elephant in the room, which is Pop Isaacs. So admittedly, the reports have cooled down on this one a bit. And at one point, it seemed like he was almost certainly coming this way, whereas now it seems to be a little more of a toss-up where it could go. He still could end up here. He could end up other places. But Pop Isaacs is a transfer from Texas Tech. He was a starter there. He's a 33-minute-a-game player, 16 points per game in the Big 12. So you hear all that and it sounds great. The reason nobody is excited, if you are not familiar, is he is pending a sexual assault case, and it's not a good one. So it is sexual assault it happened in the Bahamas. It was a teammate's sister, and she was 17. So without even getting into the moral implications of that, it's apparently not considered statutory rape in the Bahamas because the age of consent there is 16. Obviously, if that happened in the U.S., it would be. So do we really want to apply that standard? Nah, you can choose what you want to do with that information, I suppose. But that's not it. So I guess it was released as part of the indictment that the victim believed or was not consenting. Let's to put it simply, like that it was an aggressive situation. So it becomes one of those things because from what I've heard, there not to both sides of this story, but apparently there's potential for a countersuit or the victim might drop the charge. Like, how often do we hear this story in sports, right? Where, they weren't sure. There might not have been enough evidence. The charges get dropped. So who really knows what that means? But it seems like the best case scenario is he slept with one of his teammates' underage sisters. That is your best case scenario. And the worst case scenario is he raped a minor. So you put that in perspective and you say, okay, why exactly do we want this guy as part of our family, as part of our culture program, which we seem to try and care a great deal about? Like, we seem to actually mean what we say when we say those words, even though they're very much just like college coach speak. Would we do this? And if you say, well, people throw their morals out the window when they see a good basketball player, when they see a good athlete, I don't love what I see in the numbers either. Like, that's the thing. Like, 16 points a game in the Big 12 is nothing to blink your eye at. But he's a chucker. Like, to put it from an absolute basketball perspective, I don't see him as a fit. A 98.60 rating on a tournament team is awful. You might be able to count on one hand the number of at-large tournament teams that had a starter with a sub-100 O rating. That doesn't happen. His true shooting is 48%. That is the worst of any player in the portal that I'm tracking. Right, by a fairly comfortable margin, too. I think I only have one other player that's below 49.5% roughly. So yeah, chucker. 29% from three on volume, too. Like, he's taking shots. So all that thrown together, you say, is this a guy who's worth taking? Even if you want to throw the morality aside, which I don't, and say, is this guy really worth risking the program on? I don't think it is. It's an embarrassing situation, even if it's the best case situation. And on top of all that, you're not getting the player that you would want to be a leader in your program. So, and I won't say that. Like, you can see in his profile why people would be interested. Right, like, clearly he's a good basketball player. Again, you cannot average 16 a game in the Big 12 by accident. But the numbers don't support that being an efficiency trend. I just don't like any part of it. Like, even if I wanted to analyze this completely from a basketball perspective, I'd still be sitting here scratching my head saying I don't really understand it. Because, even you compare him and Gale when you say they're kind of similar in the respect that neither of them shoots well from three. One of them shoots very well at the rim, and it's not Isaac's. So I don't understand. Gale's bigger. Gale can guard more positions. So if that's the way we pivoted, I'm very happy with that. Isaac's 2 years of eligibility too. Like, so I can kind of see it, but I don't really see it. And it's one thing to say, like, hey, maybe we're interested in him because we view him as a discount. We view him as a guy who, if it was just his points per game we were buying, if it was just 16 points a game in the Big 12, that probably costs $800K. So with him, do we get him for 200? So are we looking at that and we're saying, wow, that's a cost savings. We're getting potentially a big-time scorer for almost nothing. So do I maybe see it if that's the way we're looking at it? I can wrap my head around why and still disagree with it. And here's the other problem with it. Somebody suggests, like, oh, because it seems like it's cooled down quite a bit. I at this point, I don't think we are more likely than not going to land him, whereas a week ago I would have said for sure. They do not care what we think on Twitter, nor should they. So someone suggested to me, well, what if they see the reaction to this and decide to go a different route? No, that's not what's happening. They're not seeing Dr. Chim Richolds say, I don't want this guy on my team, and they're like, well, if Dr. Chim doesn't want him on our team, then we better get rid of him. No, but who would have the kind of power to say that are the people funding this NIL deal. So if you go to someone and you say, hey, we need $100,000 to pay for Pop Isaacs, and they say, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to give this guy my money. Well, then what do you do, right? So those are the people who have influence on this kind of thing. And if that's what happened, if they spoke their mind on this and said, no, we're not going to do that, that works for me. I don't know that that's what happened, but I do know that we've had serious interest in him. It got to the stage where there was serious interest, and I've heard it from multiple sources. So at the very least, they investigated this, and this, honestly, it disappoints me. It really does. And I don't mean to... I'm generally not the sanctimonious type. I do, more often than not, believe in second chances, especially for dumb kids who got, who knows what really happened and all that, but man, even again, like I said earlier, even the best case scenario is pretty inexcusable. And you just don't need it. You just don't need to add this guy. I would rather a Roddy Gale, who I feel like I can root for every day. That, like, not that that's, I know anything about him either, but you get the point. I do think those things matter to a degree, and I think the culture and the program and all that stuff, it might not mean anything to a fan, it probably does to the players. So those are the guys we're in like a serious interest phase with. So if you want to drop here and say, okay, that's a good enough recap for me, that's everybody who I think we could be in theory nearing a commitment on right there, then great. But I'm going to keep going. I'm going to go with some of our heard from targets, like guys who we've shown interest in, and depending on what stage we're at. So St. Thomas is the first one, and those of you not familiar, that is his name, St. Thomas. Northern Colorado by way of Loyola Chicago by way of Millard North. 6'7", he's kind of a stretch 4, big 3 kind of player. 1 year of eligibility left. He played his first 2 at Loyola. He is the number 37 player in the portal by On3, and there's just a lot to like here. I mean, aside from the Omaha connections, aside from that he's a Millard North kid, and I'd love to get him back and pair him with Jason. 20 point per game player, he averages a double-double. 20 and 10, 4 assists, 35 minutes a game. 87% free throw shooter, 57% from the field. Only shoots 33% from 3, but takes a lot of tough shots. I think that number goes up if he's in an offense with more spacing where he's not maybe the primary threat. He is super efficient at the rim. He's a good rebounder, a good passer. If he can hit threes, 36% is all we're talking about. It's a great ad. It's a great ad. Like, for me, top 3 player in the portal for me, for this Creighton team. We've shown prior interest. He doesn't have a comprehensive heard from list out there, but there's no way we're not reaching out to the point where I even think we would be the slight favorites, but there will be heavy competition. There's really not a lot of chatter around him because I think he's going through the draft process, so we may not hear anything until the end of May. This might be the kind of guy where we have to prepare for not even having him as an option, and then hopefully he comes along later in the summer. But yeah, he's a great fit. He's just a player we absolutely need from my perspective in terms of his profile. He's a bigger 3 guard. I think he can play that position. He can slash. He can guard fours if he has to. Again, it just seems like a no-brainer to me. Davion Bailey. We showed interest in him, I think, yesterday. He's a 6'4" shooting guard from Ball State. He's a former JUCO D2 player. So he's got either 1 or 2 years of eligibility left, but I'm not really sure. Basically, he just shoots the shit out of the ball. 43% from 3 on 150 attempts, average 13 a game, playing 33 minutes for Ball State. Good true shooting, good O rating. The 3-point number just jumps out. This to me is the obvious case of we just want to have him. He can play off the bench, and he can be an offensive threat if we need him to be. But some of these guys who they just escalate every year, coming from either D2 or JUCO, they just keep leveling up. So this is the kind of guy, like I saw the other teams that were interested are like Missouri Valley A10 programs where he could probably go and start right away. And then if he does have 1 more year of eligibility, then maybe he could jump that next level again. But yeah, if we add him and we look at him and we say, yeah, we think you're a great option coming off the bench who could maybe start if in a pinch or if you really show something, yeah, I'd absolutely be down for that. There's a lot to like in the profile. Adu Thiero from Kentucky, 6'7". He's kind of a Swiss Army knife. He can play anything from a 2 to a 4 probably. Bigger guard. He's 6'7", like 220 or something like that. 121.5 O rating, but it'd be pretty hard to have a bad O rating in the Kentucky offense. He played 21 minutes a game, so he was getting minutes on a very good team. Only 7 points per game, but his usage was so low that the offense really didn't run through him. 5 rebounds is nice. 80% from the line, 52% from the field. Has a decent stroke for a bigger guard. He didn't shoot a lot of threes last year, like not enough where I'd even consider the percentage. Big physical player. It sounds like he's a guy the staff is really interested in, but I don't think that interest is going to be reciprocated. I think his first visit was Ohio State, it sounds like. So, yeah, I don't know. He's a 2 years of eligibility guy. Would be a little bit of a project, but I don't think you couldn't be excited about landing him. So we'll see where that goes. I've got his, because I kind of keep like a percent chance on everyone. So I've got him at like a non-zero percentage. Like it could happen, but I'm not counting on it. Micah Peavy was a guy we just recently showed interest in out of TCU. He is now committed to Georgetown, and I am very okay with that. He is a good player, but to me, he seems like an older Jason Green. He is definitely a high major player, definitely a high major starter this year. I think he'll be good for Georgetown. I think that's a veteran presence. He chose them over some much better options. I think his Final Four was us, Kansas State, and Georgetown, it sounds like. So he's a big deal for Georgetown, where he might have been it would have just been a weird fit with us. He's a true 4. I don't really see him playing anywhere else. So either he's taking Mason's minutes, Jason's minutes, or McAndrew's minutes, and I don't love the prospect of any of those 3. I would rather see any of those guys get those minutes than a player who is just a good hand, right, and just an older player. Brendan Wenzel from Wyoming. He's kind of a true wing, spot-up shooter, veteran player. He played 36 minutes a game for Wyoming. Just a shooter, 37% on 160-plus attempts, 12 points a game. He heard from us. He's down to a 3 that he's visiting. We are not included. I am not disappointed. Seemed like he could have been. People were calling me crazy for saying I think he's a bench player at the Power 6 level, but that's what I see here. I guess we'll find out if I'm wrong. His final 3 are, I think, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, and it was either OU or TCU, one of the other Texas or Oklahoma schools. So if he starts in any of those places and contributes, I'll retract, I guess. But I just didn't see a lot in the profile that screams Creighton Blue Jay or screams Power 6 player. For a shooter, his percentage is good, not great. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not disappointed. Sean Padula from Virginia Tech. So he was supposedly a secret visit to us. I think we're in his non-reported top 3. He's a 6'1" combo guard. I think he plays like a true combo guard, like some on ball, some off ball. He's ranked 40th by On3. His PRPG is good from Torvik. His usage was very high. His true shooting was not. 16 points a game, 5 assists, so he's comfortable as a passer. I didn't love this one from an efficiency standpoint. I think we can do better here. He's a 32% for three-point shooter. Not a great finisher amongst the weeds. 80% from the free throw line. We kept our interest quiet. It looks like he's heading to Oklahoma. Sounds to be Kentucky got a visit out of him, but that was with Calipari. So I don't know if that will still be in play or not. But yeah, it sounds like Oklahoma's the favorite here. I was surprised to hear of our interest because I don't really see him and Ashworth together as a great pair. So I don't know. He can score, he can pass. He would need to improve his shot a little bit for him to play off ball. I don't know. I wouldn't be crazy about it, but again, it's another example of poaching a high major player, right? Where you took I think he was their leading scorer this year. You take him off their roster, and he comes to a better program, right? And you say, like, oh, of course Creighton's a better program than Virginia Tech. Of course it's a better program than Ohio State. Those weren't always easy things to say, right? And they're not necessarily better jobs, better basket. I'm talking about Ohio State in that respect, but at the very least, the state of the program right now is, yes, we are a better spot than both of those teams. Myron Amy Jr., MJ Amy Jr., San Jose State combo guard, 6'3". We are in his Final Four, and this is a weird one. So it's us, Loyola Marymount, Cal, and Butler. So 2 Big East schools and 2 California schools, and 1 true mid-major in there. So this is a weird one. He played well at San Jose State, right? 16 points a game, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. From an off-ball perspective, 37% from 3 on 190 shots. So he takes a lot of threes, makes a lot of threes. Just doesn't seem like a complete Power 6 starter to me. So again, this is the kind of guy I look at and I say, okay, if he's in a 3-guard rotation, yeah, I'm fine with that. He can play off-ball as a shooter when Ashworth's on. If you tell me our 3-guard rotation next year is Ashworth, Amy, and Maddox, like, I'm not super excited about that. But at the same time, like, that could be one of those plug-and-play kind of situations where, you might be able to get something from one of those guys in the right spot. So I don't think we're the leaders, because I can't imagine there's any way we've promised him starter minutes, whereas the other 3 probably could. He feels a lot like the DJ Davis import to Butler, but not quite as good, not quite as projectable maybe. I don't know. I think if he went to Butler, I wouldn't be excited to play against him, but at the same time, I wouldn't be disappointed if we don't land him. Joshua Jefferson, another true wing forward from St. Mary's. He is down to a top 3 of Virginia, Iowa State, and somebody, I think it was VCU. We were interested in him, and again, it just seemed like a weird call for us to make. Like, again, he just seems like an older Jason Green. And if we have the option of an older Jason Green or Jason Green playing minutes, I'd rather see the sophomore Jason Green playing minutes next year, right? So again, not disappointed that we didn't end up with him. So now I'm kind of going into, so again, this is like another jumping off point where I'm going to go from guys that we've shown interest in to guys that we haven't, but I really hope we either do or will soon, or already did, I should say. And I'll start with Cade Tyson, 6'7" wing out of Belmont. For me, he is maybe my most desired reasonable get. Like, he's an up transfer, but number 25 in the portal by On3, one of the better true shooting percentages of the guys I'm looking at. 64% true shooting, 119 O rating, shoots 47% from 3.
I mean, he shoots 47% from 3 on 170 attempts, 16 points a game, 6 rebounds, 86% from the line, 52% from the field. There's nothing not to like. His offensive profile is that of a complete player and a complete wing. He could be a better passer for sure. And we haven't reported any interest. I don't think we're going to. It sounds like Carolina finally got interested, and I think that was the one he was waiting for. But this guy, I mean, if it's true that we didn't get in contact with him, I would be very disappointed, because this just seems like such a Creighton Blue Jay that I don't know how we wouldn't. The offense Belmont runs is very similar to ours and has been for years. He's familiar in that system. He's got 2 years of eligibility, and he shoots 47% from 3 as a 6'7" wing. Like, yeah, we've seen that doesn't necessarily translate, at least not in the first year, but he's got 2 years, right? Like, Baylor came here and his percentage took a hit. Everyone we've transferred, Ashworth came in, his percentage took a hit. So would his percentage stay at 47%? No, I'm not crazy. But if it drops 7%, he's still shooting 40. You know, like, so I would be disappointed to learn that we really did not get involved with him at all. He might just be destined to go to Carolina, or destined, you know, like one of the programs that we could comfortably say is a better land than us, and that's fine. If we just thought, hey, we've got no chance, so we're not going to bother, that's one thing. But man, I think you could make him a heck of a pitch. So, which brings me to Mason Gillis. This one confuses me from every aspect. So, for those of you who don't know, he's a 6'7" true wing for Purdue. He comes off the bench for them, or at least did this year. He's got 1 year of eligibility left, and his numbers. So he is a 135 O rating, which is psychotic. Like, that's ridiculous. His true shooting is 68%. When I plugged that into my Excel conditional formatting, like, that broke the whole thing. That reset everybody's color. That reset everybody's number. It is 3.5 full points higher than the next closest guy on this list. It is one of the best, if not the best, true shooting percentages in the country, especially from a non-big. He played 21 minutes a game with Purdue, only 6 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, so you like that he's getting involved in other places. He's a sneaky great rebounder, actually. Very good jumper, very good athlete. He is one of the most efficient players in the country. To the point I'm stunned that Purdue didn't use him in a bigger role. I'm stunned that he left, because I figure he would have started next year. And I'm more stunned that people aren't reacting like this is a big deal. For me, if you get him in the right system, I don't know about All-American, but All-Conference player, sure. Absolutely. He's not a create his own shot kind of guy, but in an offense like ours, that's okay. You know, like, if you pair him with the right guards, that's okay. So I think there's programs out there that he would thrive in. And I don't know, like, I feel like every time I talk about him, like, I'm missing something. Because I think the general, like, online perspective is that he's not that great of a player, because he's just a role player for the second best team in the country. I think he is a potential breakout star this year if he goes to the right spot. I think we would be one of those right spots if we pair him with the right combo guard. For me, if Trey by some miracle does stay next year, and our starting lineup is Ashworth, Trey, Gillis, Miller Green, and whoever our center is, I think he can thrive in that. I haven't heard any news yet about who is interested in him, but for me, I've got him as my number 5 player in the portal, but in terms of how well I think they fit with us. So I really hope we get involved there. Aiden Holloway out of Auburn. So he was a freshman this year, and he's transferring out of Auburn for reasons that, I'll be honest, I don't quite understand. He's a 6'4" combo guard. He was a either 5-star or borderline 5-star freshman last year. We were initially involved in his recruitment. I don't think we made it very far. He is a profile player. He had one of the lowest true shooting percentages on this list. but it bothers me less because I see how obvious his talent is in terms of him being a true like combo, like an attacking point guard, an off-ball slasher. 20 minutes a game for Auburn, 7 points, 3 assists. Only shot 30% from 3 on a lot of it. He shot 173s despite only playing 20 minutes a game. So the profile's there in his three-point shooting. He's a 78% free throw shooter, so you'd like to think he could improve on that stroke a little bit. There's a lot for him to improve on, but there's also a ton of time for him to do it. And this is a guy for me that screams, if we are trying to build a new core and we want a group of guys that might stay together for a couple of years, and you tell me we could have a lineup next season, not this season, but next coming season, of Holloway, Larry Johnson, Miller, Green, McAndrew, or some combination of that where it's those guys together, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. Because this guy, like, he's got the potential all over the place. To play 20 minutes as a freshman in this day and age of college basketball for a team that's that good, I don't expect his efficiency numbers to be good. Nemhard's weren't his first year either. And he's bigger, he's longer, he's got more tricks in his bag, I think. So, this guy would just be a no-brainer for me. I don't think we'll pursue him because I imagine the price tag is pretty high for a guy who's not proven yet. But, man, I would do cartwheels. Anthony Delorso out of Campbell, 6'6", true wing, ranked pretty highly by most portal services. Somebody had him as like a top 10 player in the portal. I don't know if I see that. High usage player, 108 O rating is nothing crazy, 59% true shooting, average 19 points a game for Campbell. 81% free throw shooter, 39% three-point shooter. So he can score at all three levels. Good shooter, strong rebounder. He has good rebound rates despite spending a lot of his time out on the wing. There's no reported interest here, but again, this just seems like a guy that would come in and fill our 3 spot pretty effectively. Doesn't pass it a whole lot. Again, he's a little bit of a true wing. It's not like we've been spoiled with the Baylor Shireman wing that can just do it all. We're not finding that player this year. That player is not currently in the portal, from my perspective. Everyone wanted to draw the Fiddler comparisons to him because he scores a lot and because they're both from the Summit League. They are not the same player. To me, Baylor Shireman is not in the portal this year. And it's not me saying I think there's a Baylor Shireman in the portal every year. But I don't see Shireman, I don't see Connect for sure. So, we'll see. There's a lot of time left. Seth Trimble, for me, is basically exactly the same as Aiden Holloway, but with another year under his belt. Combo guard out of North Carolina. Played 17 minutes for them. 2 years of eligibility left, 112 O rating, 42% from 3, but on super limited attempts. He's still raw. And I don't love that was his sophomore season and he still kind of hadn't figured it out yet, but he was on a good team. He was not playing consistent minutes. He's another guy, if we add, I just am not going to be disappointed. He's from Wisconsin, so there's going to be quite a few schools from the Midwest that are going to be interested. We have not reached out. I don't know of anyone who has yet. It was still pretty early the last I looked at him. But yeah, name to watch. I would be excited to see him filling our 2 spot next year, if need be. Duke Miles out of High Point. He's got his numbers jump off the page from an efficiency standpoint, which should not surprise me from a guy in a Huss system and a McDermott system. He was a 4.2 on Torvik, which, like I said, is same as Fiddler. It's right up there at the very top. 123 O rating, 62% true shooting on 17 points a game. So he's got crazy efficiency numbers. He's good assist turnover guy as a true point guard. I don't know if he's a great fit unless Ashworth leaves because he is, I think, a true point guard profile. So if you're playing him and Ashworth at the same time, you're kind of small at the guard position. Miles is 6'3", he's not tiny, but at the same time, it limits what you can do from a matchup perspective. To me, this is a guy will probably get a great recommendation on him. If Huss thinks he's ready, I'm sure he'll tell us as much. So if we end up reaching out to him, I'll be wholeheartedly in support. I think that's it. There are other guys I have on this list, and there are guys that I'm tracking just in case we get involved. Brandon Garrison's on my list. I think he's going to Oklahoma. Jonas Adu from Tennessee. I have no idea where he's heading. Darlin Stone Dubar, I think, is committing to Tennessee. Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden is an interesting situation to monitor. They're both 7-foot centers, up transfers, one from FAU, one from Yale. And I think they're both trying to go to Michigan. The problem is I can't imagine them ending up with both of them. Wolf seems the more likely at this point, and Golden is actually an FAU guy trying to follow May. So that would be a weird situation if May takes Wolf over Golden and then Golden has to find somewhere. I don't know. It'd be an odd situation to keep an eye on because I would not hate ending up with whoever doesn't go there. But that's it from me. I'll try, like I said, to do something like this every time there's a big update or otherwise just every couple of weeks. So hope you enjoy it. Let me know if there's any good changes to this format or anything I could do better to make this easier to listen to.